Well, my friends, now you can get ready for some football, as now the regular season is finally here. The Pittsburgh Steelers end the preseason, the 4 games in their preseason. The NFL moved down to 3, but the Steelers still had 4. And now we can find out who is officially going to be on this roster and get to games that will actually matter. To get there, though, we had to certainly get through a snooze fest, to say the least, here on this gloomy Friday night in Pittsburgh. Our colleague down there, Mitchell Northam, who we appreciate covering that game down there, a stringer for us here at Steelers Now, covering it in Carolina. The Steelers lose to the Carolina Panthers, and that was a rough go. Pittsburgh with that mop-up touchdown at the end, 30-9 on the loss, even Boswell missing the extra point at the end there. So it wasn't the best of day for the Steelers. Many of those players who needed a great day did not put it together. We are going to now discuss what those players did, positive and negative, who maybe will make this final roster, and how this regular season is going to look. I'm, of course, your host, Mike Asti. I am joined by our analyst, Nick Farabaugh, and I believe, at least I'm thinking this is the case, we're doing a little test run right here, is that we're shaking the kinks off in the preseason before we get ready for regular season action as well, that we are live on both the Facebook and I'm hoping the YouTube channel as well. So I'm going to offer this to you guys. Feel free to chat along on the YouTube. Feel free to comment along on the Facebook. Feel free to do whatever. And hopefully we'll somewhere that you can see it. If not, this will be archived for you, of course, on Steelers Now. Our post-game coverage is there, and also on this Pittsburgh Sports Live YouTube channel. So, Nick, to get things started, we got to start here. It's been the topic of the whole offseason. It's been annoying at times, but Dwayne Haskins finally got the start in this game. It was his first start of the preseason, first start with the Steelers. Mason Rudolph didn't play. Ben didn't play. Josh Dobbs got some mop-up duty. Josh Dobbs then left with an injury. We saw Dwayne Haskins again. Haskins didn't play well. I don't think there's any point of asking you if he played well or not. He certainly did not play well. His biggest stands out there were agreeing on Twitter they didn't play well. It was phenomenal. So he didn't play well. But did Haskins maybe do anything at the end? They did score to change the course of his actions earlier in the game. Did he do anything that maybe just throughout this offseason and preseason that maybe either earns him to be on this Steelers roster? How do you think this shakes out? Because with Dobbs' injury, does he still slide in as QB3, or is he trade bait? Does Mason earn a trade because he's a commodity maybe elsewhere? Does he stay on as QB2? What are your thoughts on the Steelers' quarterback depth chart now that the preseason is over? We've seen everyone. It's done. Ben's the starter. Who's behind them? And how would you handle things here?
Well, I think my thoughts are exactly what they were coming into the game, really coming into the preseason, to be quite honest with you. I think they don't have much in the way of a future here in terms of, Haskins is the answer, Mason's not the answer.
Right.
No one's an answer there. So the next quarterback is going to be a draft pick or someone outside the organization.
Okay.
I think that's become abundantly clear to pretty much everybody, even the Haskins stands. If you're the stray Mason Rudolph stan, I think you know that too. But
I don't know if there's any of those out there. Maybe the Mason Rudolph defenders, but
yeah. I don't know if there's Rudolph stands, but
right.
Haskins looked bad tonight, and it was a combination of things. He looked tentative. He didn't look like he wanted to take chances down the field until really the second quarter. Here's the thing. Mike Tomlin said it earlier in the week. When you play JV games, you have to look like a varsity player, right?
Right, exactly.
He did, and to his credit, he comes in against the JV Panthers, if you will, and on that final drive, he does look varsity, right? He did look like a varsity quarterback.
Okay,
but when he's going varsity against varsity, he looks like the junior varsity. Like, you can tell. Mason Rudolph has a little of line. He didn't look like he had any semblance of confidence. Yeah. Maybe, in some ways, I felt like he came into this game and you could just feel like Haskins knew he was not going to beat Rudolph for the quarterback 2 spot. And I think that's what he was hoping for.
Right.
And coming into this game, I feel like he just kind of knew there's nothing I can really do. But still, he didn't play well. And he is going to be the quarterback 3. I think, Dobbs didn't do himself any favors either. I thought Dobbs played pretty bad when he was in there. So I think pretty comfortably you're going to see Dwayne Haskins as the QB3, but he's not going to get a helmet unless there's an injury.
Yeah. Okay. I also will say hello now to our Facebook streamers over there on Facebook at Steelers Now on Facebook. We are now streaming live on the Steelers Now Facebook page. We were on YouTube a little bit, so I bumped YouTube off. Going to try you guys out on Facebook, and then we'll mix it together at some point. Again, Nick Farabaugh. I'm Mike Asti here. This is our Steelers edition of Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. The Steelers losing 34-9 as they conclude their preseason. We're talking the quarterback battle, of course. That is what everyone's been talking, and we'll see now how that final roster shakes out. So you believe Haskins will be on this as QB3, Mason QB2, and Ben QB1. You don't then see a trade happening because there are teams that need a quarterback. There are teams that certainly would probably love to have Mason Rudolph, at least with his experience. He certainly doesn't make the mistakes anymore. Haskins does have a high ceiling. There could be value for those guys, and Dobbs' injury could play a role here. He also did not play well in this game, played well in the game in Canton, but that feels like eons ago. So you don't see a trade, though. You think this is the depth chart.
Yeah, I think this is the depth chart, and I think, Dobbs is either going to IR or Dobbs is a practice squad stash. Maybe he gets signed by someone as a QB3. Okay. I just don't think there's any value to it. I think teams know that, Josh Dobbs is going to be cut, so why trade capital for him when you can just sign him? I mean, and I don't think it's going to be like some big, scrum to go get Josh Dobbs. I mean, love the guy, but I don't see there being a large competition. If there's going to be a trade on the roster, it's going to be one of the punters. It's going to be, something like that, or one of the D linemen, where the Steelers have an abundance of depth for.
I guess you don't normally, though, figure, especially for a team in win now mode, if you're going to win now. Obviously, the reality is, too, if Ben misses significant time, if he can't be the starter going in the playoffs, if they would happen to be getting there down the stretch of this season, then this season's really not going to go where you want it to go anyway, whether it's Mason Rudolph, Dwayne Haskins, Josh Dobbs, Devlin Hodges that people like to bring up who's out of football right now. It wouldn't matter. So it has to be Ben or bust this year in terms of win now mode. Let next year be a question for another day. However, if you do have to have a backup come in, for me, again, because he doesn't make the mistakes and he's done it before, I would prefer Rudolph right now from what I've seen. I think he can stabilize. If the defense creates some turnovers and the offense picks him up, he could win some games. He's proven it before. Haskins could implode and ruin some games for you. So in terms of backup for this year, I would lean Rudolph, and that's why I've been leaning Rudolph. But you normally don't ever want to see the QB3 even in those scenarios. Maybe QB2 for a game or two with Ben never really playing full seasons, but not QB3. So does that maybe lean to where some are thinking, why not then trade one of them? Why not trade Haskins? Could you get somebody to take a flyer on him in terms of a late round draft pick that you would gain draft capital? Because you are going to need to rebuild at some point with a real new era when you're done with Ben, when even Cam Hayward's gone, and it's totally a new young cast of characters.
I just don't think there's going to be interest in Dwayne Haskins. Okay. I really don't. I mean,
so it's about the interest because there's really no benefit of a great QB3. I don't think there's what are you going to do with the QB3 on your team?
I don't think there's much interest in Dwayne Haskins. He's got to have the perfect system behind him.
Okay.
He's looked bad at times in the preseason. He was awful in Washington. Right. Yeah, he has that first round pedigree. I mean, listen, I think Dwayne Haskins, the most you're getting for him is like a 6th or a 5th round pick. And at that point, I would maybe do that, but I think you can get a 6th or a 5th for Jordan Berry. I feel like you can get that for.
Is that why some are saying though that because obviously it has to be Ben or bust, even if those who think Rudolph's the better backup option, that could then be the conversation of trading Rudolph because maybe you could get more in draft capital.
I think Rudolph gives you more now than he would give you.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
because Ben, again, as you said, Ben doesn't usually play. It's 17 games.
You're going to figure one of these guys is going to play a couple games. Possibly.
Yeah, you have to figure that Ben's probably not going to end up staying healthy all year, right? He just doesn't stay healthy. He takes a lot of hits behind this O-line too. Behind this O-line,
we'll get there. Yeah, absolutely.
Behind this O-line, I mean, no, you got to keep the guy that at least shows a level of poise and comfort to a degree. And I'm not saying Mason Rudolph is good. He's not. He's bad. But I'm more comfortable with Mason Rudolph on the football field operating the Steelers offense than I am Dwayne Haskins right now. And that's really that simple. But yeah, I think Haskins I think Haskins' value when we talk about his ceiling, right? When we talk about
absolutely,
what he could be, I
100%.
feel like
He has
his
the
future
talent edge.
ceiling,
He has the ceiling edge for
I
sure.
feel like his future ceiling, the investment that you put in to him this year, it's a multi-year project. I feel like trading him for a 6th-round pick, I mean, yeah, it's a win, but he could become something more. He could become your backup. He could become, once Mason, maybe you can trade Mason Rudolph next year because Haskins grows this year and then he can come your backup. And, there's so many scenarios you can work out here.
Yeah, and maybe if Mason Rudolph plays like he did against the Browns in Week 17 last year in 2 or 3 games this year that we know he's going to have to play at some point, maybe then his value is really high. Maybe then you're trading him high for maybe a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick because there are teams, again, that would desperately need a quarterback. Maybe there's some team out there that would think, okay, Mason could be my starter. We've seen that happen with Garoppolo in New England. He got mop-up duty a couple seasons, and then 49ers fell in love with him, and he ended up getting big money. So you don't know. I'm not saying that I would do it if I'm running a franchise, but you don't know what teams are thinking, what may occur. It only will take one team to fall in love with somebody if they see a game or two that they like. And it's higher likelihood that Rudolph would be able to impress somebody like that than Haskins, of course, because Haskins seems to have a further way to go. But it was a smart move. They weren't going to trade for Sam Darnold. I do find it ironic. I don't know if anyone else appreciates this, but I find it ironic the final preseason game was Haskins versus Sam Darnold because Sam Darnold, it was never going to happen. But the other rumor mill was, why don't the Steelers trade for Sam Darnold before he went to Carolina? So you get to see him in that final game. It was never going to occur. We'll see how he does trying to salvage his career with a little bit more help, maybe in Carolina.
I said it before. So glad they spent $800K on Dwayne Haskins and didn't trade a 2nd-round for
right. And that would have had to trade. You would have had to trade a 2nd-round or a 3rd-round pick or something like that if you could finagle a deal. And Dwayne Haskins ends up being low risk, high reward. So as we've talked about too off the air, that if you end up having Dwayne Haskins as only being your QB2 in the future if Mason would be gone, and then you get, say, a 3rd-round pick for Mason and Haskins is QB2 to somebody else after Ben, that's still a win based on $800K. So it's low risk, high reward. There's really no risk there. Again, Nick Farabaugh, Mike Asti here, our Steelers edition of Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Like and subscribe. So like here on the Facebook page, comment along if you want to do so, and also subscribe over there on Pittsburgh Sports Live. We'll get this whole show on the channel at some point here after this broadcast. And then, of course, our postgame coverage at SteelersNow.com and at PGH Steelers Now on Twitter. Now, moving away from the quarterback conversation, because it is going to be that conversation, and until we have the final roster, we're going to probably have people talking about it ad nauseum, and it's one of those things that just will continue, and honestly, we're going to be in a regular season. I am sure, Nick, you know this as well as me, when Mason has to play that Week 15 game, he throws one bad ball, and there's going to be people out there saying it should have been Haskins. So Haskins didn't do enough, simply. That's really kind of where we're left with. He's responsible for his own fate in Washington. He didn't study. He was celebrating losses. It's his own fault. Yeah, he had the talent. You take a flyer, but didn't play well enough now. So what can you do? And he had a chance. I don't think it was a high one, but he had a chance to maybe steal the job where they would get in the war room and discuss these trade opportunities. Or do we trade Rudolph? Is he our QB2? Do we have a future with him? If Haskins would have played like he did against Philadelphia, against Carolina, he played much worse and arguably played just like he did with Washington, which is not nearly good enough to even be a backup in the NFL. Moving on from the QB conversation, though, what else did you see in this game in terms of the position battles? There's still a position battle at running back. There's still a conversation that some are saying that somehow Benny Snell could snag RB2, which doesn't seem to make sense off the offseason, and how Balaj and Anthony McFarland have played. And then even the rest of the battles across the board, but I guess sticking there first on offense still.
I thought the running back battle was so banal. Benny Snell just doesn't do anything. I mean, he runs hard. He's solid in pass pro, but he doesn't really make a lot of guys miss. He's not particularly dynamic. He doesn't have a lot of explosiveness. He's not particularly quick.
Right.
He's just a guy. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about Benny Snell. He's just a guy. But I think the Steelers do have a soft spot for him. I mean, I really do. I don't get why they do, but they love him. And Balaj, didn't get much playing time. I mean, it was really Benny Snell, and that's it. They really did give Benny Snell the whole showcase. No McFarland tonight, which in my opinion speaks to McFarland as the running back too, at least in the way that he's might be getting more snaps with Najee Harris. I don't know if Najee Harris gets hurt, if he'll be the main guy. But the fact that we didn't see Anthony McFarland tonight lets me know that they hold Anthony McFarland in a decently high regard. So
Right.
he's a lock. He's probably a roster lock. I
Right.
think that he is. Listen, I mean, I'm going to be real. I think the surprise cut could be Kalen Ballage.
Okay.
I don't agree with it. I like what I've seen out of Kalen Ballage.
I think the rest of the NFL would love that. There would be a team that would snag him in a second.
Yeah, I've loved what I've seen out of him. As the running back 3, I think he's been a good special teamer. I think he's been good in pass pro. I thought he's shown off solid hands. He's got more explosiveness than Snell does. He has more ability to create than Snell.
Right.
But if what I think is going to happen is, and I do think they're only going to keep 3 running backs. I truly do. I think we're going to see a 3 running back plus Derek Watt, of course. Because I think they're going to end up keeping 7 defensive linemen with whatever the heck's going on with Tuitt. I think they're going to keep 7 D linemen. There's too many talented defensive linemen. It's just how it is. So I feel like you're going to keep 7 defensive linemen at the expense of one of those running backs. And I think the surprise cut could be Ballage because, again, I just think they love Snell. I really do. I think they love what he brings to the table. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know how that's going to go. That's still the one position. That's probably the biggest position where I'm like, I don't really know what they're going to do.
I think Snell being the backup running back would be one of the more surprising developments of the offseason, just because that hasn't been what anyone's been telling you on the field. That hasn't screamed that to anybody on the field. Snell certainly hasn't been impressive when a Steeler before. I don't know if they're maybe hypnotized by those pearly whites because he has one of the biggest smiles in all the NFL, just flashes those at you. Maybe they love that. I don't know what's going on. He does seem to have a positive favor with the coaching staff, though. That's the only advantage there. Anthony McFarland, a lot of bursts coming out of college. We haven't fully been able to see it, but he did show flashes of that this preseason. Ballage has certainly performed well, but he's kind of maybe that new guy. Jalen Samuels is a thing of the past. We'll see what happens there. I think one thing we do know for sure that we didn't know this time last year is the running game is going to be better. The running game will not be the worst in football. Maybe it's not going to be held up by the backup if it is Benny Snell, but Najee Harris is going to be a stud. Najee Harris certainly can make up for the offensive line. It might kill him for his future. It might not be good for his overall health, but he's going to be better than James Conner out there. He is a true running back 1 in the NFL. He's ready to do that. He's been already impressing. And if you want to have somebody tell you they believe in that, Mike Tomlin said it to us before the preseason got underway at training camp. Najee Harris is going to play all 4 of those games. He wants to see him in all 4 of those games. He then said recently, when he clearly wasn't going to play in the 4th game, what made you change your mind? And he kind of basically, gave you the answer that he saw what he needed to see. He didn't need another game out of him. And you mentioned the guys that were sitting in this game. That's, I think, what fans need to understand. The Mason Rudolphs, the guys sitting in this game, it's actually a positive for them, probably. Mason Rudolph should probably sleep comfortably tonight knowing that he will be in the National Football League. He's certainly on the Steelers roster, and if they somehow make a move and he's not on the Steelers roster, that's because they traded him and he's on another roster. He will receive NFL money this year. I think he can certainly be comfortable with that, whereas it might be up in the air for a guy like Dobbs and those others. Now, Nick, moving off the offensive side of the football, because most of the other position battles, even though they're the key flashy positions that everyone's going to discuss, are over on the defensive side of the ball. And you could argue they're even more important because you're not going to see the backup quarterback more than a couple times a year if your season's going well, and Ben should be your starter, and he's looked good, but we'll see what happens once we get to December. That's really what's going to dictate things. But defensively, you mentioned Tuitt, you mentioned the line. Before we get there, though, the secondary. That's been a major question mark. They're going to have to rely on older players more than they maybe would like. Joe Hayden's going to be relied on more than you would like for a player of his age. We've got to see Justin Lane. No one's really been impressed there. How does this configure in the secondary? Mike Hilton no longer there. Does Cam Sutton go in the slot? What's going to happen? I mean, Arthur Mallett having the injury last week, it kind of shakes things up a little bit. And, of course, Brooks and that movement.
no one really grabbed a hold of a spot tonight other than James Pierre. I thought James Pierre was phenomenal. I thought James Pierre was the biggest winner of tonight's game. I thought he was huge.
Or even the preseason overall, really.
Yeah, I think he might have been, man. I think he had a big time game tonight, though, coming downhill, making a lot of physical run stops. Really wasn't targeted at all in coverage. And the reason he wasn't targeted was because no one was open to his side. Right. So I thought he played a phenomenal game. And it's not like, that Carolina receiver core is bad. I mean, they have DJ Moore, they have Robbie Anderson, who just got paid. Terrace Marshall's a nice rookie. They have a nice few receivers in that room down there in Carolina. And I thought James Pierre really took a grip and a vice grip hold of that outside cornerback slot in the sub packages. I think what you're going to see week one, and this is, I do get the feeling that they're going to end up making a move. I do think that they're going to look around, see what they can get, because Mallett's hurt now, and what we don't know the specifics of his injury. And when we look at what we see from a guy as media, from a guy like James Pierre, you can see the dedication, the presence. He's just a even keeled presence. And even when he gets beat, he comes back and responds to adversity in situations. Yeah. I think that's huge for getting those snaps. I think Justin Lane, on the other hand, Justin Lane has finished off the training camp and the preseason well. I didn't think he was the good thing here. I mean, he had, I think, maybe 2 targets his way, maybe 2 catches. I didn't think Justin Lane was bad tonight at all. I thought he was pretty neutral, and I think that's a good thing for Justin Lane. So I think Lane has secured his spot on the roster as well, pretty comfortably. But Trey Norwood, I thought, was decent in the slot, but I like Trey Norwood better as the back free safety, the third reserve there. In case Minkah Fitzpatrick gets hurt, I would want to put Trey Norwood there over in the slot. So I feel like they have to make a move in the slot, but I think they just have to accept that, hey, we're not going to get a Mike Hilton clone. Like, you're just not. There's very few Mike Hilton-esque players. If you wanted to get the Mike Hilton clone, you should have signed Mike Hilton. That's simple.
Right.
Simple.
And that was a whole drama through the offseason, early in the offseason, that has led him to the Bengals. Yeah,
exactly. And if you wanted that skill set, you should have re-signed Mike Hilton. You just have to accept you're probably going to have to use a traditional slot corner, which is a cover guy. And that's Cam Sutton. It's whatever. Cam Sutton's a good slot corner. I mean, there's all this hubbub. Oh, they don't have a slot corner. Cam Sutton's a good slot corner. He just can't blitz. Like, you don't need to blitz as a slot corner. Send Terrell Edmonds. That's all you have to do.
Here's my doomsday question, though, Nick. Hypothetically, what if they don't make any moves? They made the trade for Joe Sherbert. So, I mean, they make the move linebacker-wise, but say they don't make any moves for the secondary. They stand pat. Say Joe Hayden gets hurt at some point or cannot deliver what you need to rely on him for. Then really, and say Mallett's injury is serious, say nothing else gets changed, say you do put Cam in the slot, but then you're wondering what's going to happen outside and you're getting torched by teams. They're going to face some solid quarterbacks early in the season. They're going to face some better quarterbacks than they faced last year, now without Mike Hilton. Then what do you do? Or does this just become, in that scenario, the weakness of this team that likely derails them from going too far?
That's a Minkah Fitzpatrick scenario. Sean Davis gets hurt.
Okay.
You make a big time splash trade. You can see that coming from a mile away with Kevin Colbert. That might be.
So a lot of this hinges on a move, then, though. So you're basically requiring a move.
Listen, if Joe Hayden goes down for a significant portion of time, they're going to make a trade. I guarantee it. They'll make a trade, whether that's C.J. Henderson or we saw Lonnie Johnson today get a little bit of buzz for him to maybe be traded.
Right.
There's probably going to be a cornerback that's out there that's a little disgruntled and wants traded. It usually happens. There's a few guys every now and then that want to be traded like that. And I think the Steelers will make a move. I think they're going to make a move, though, before or just after 53-man cutdowns. I think they're going to look around the league, sign a guy, maybe, out of a deep secondaries like, say, Denver. I think Denver is really interesting. They have probably the second deepest, if not the deepest secondary in the league. I think you're going to look. I wouldn't have been surprised if the Steelers called the Ravens about Sean Wade the other day. I think maybe they put a call in there, but the Broncos are very interesting because, Bryce Callahan's there. He might get traded. There's trading rumors around him, but they have a lot of deep players there. Nate Hairston is there. Steelers liked him in the pre-draft process. There's a lot of guys I think that they're going to look at when you look at, well, who could they get? I think that they're going to get someone, if not just for, they might not start in the slot, but they're going to be a depth guy. So you don't have to panic.
I think the Steelers also know that they are in win-now mode. Kevin Colbert's made it clear the Steelers are in win-now mode. You don't trade for a Pro Bowl caliber linebacker like Joe Sherbert if you're not in win-now mode. We touched on it at the top of the show. Ben's future, the quarterback position future, all of it's in flux beyond this season, so that's even more pressure to win now. Juju, his future, all in flux beyond this year, so again, more pressure to win now. And they probably look around the National Football League, certainly AFC, and say, and I'm not in any way picking them to win the conference or the Super Bowl, but the Chiefs, yeah, it's been back-to-back years in the Super Bowl, but that doesn't last forever. Say they don't go. Then you're looking at the Chargers, who still have a young quarterback. You're looking at the Raiders. Do they take another step? They're better than some thought last year. The Ravens, if Jackson stays healthy, but some are not totally sold in them as a team, and they have still had issues at the wide receiver position. The Bengals might not be ready with Burrow. The Browns could take a step back. Are they really ready together to go to that level? Obviously, Buffalo will be a sexy pick and a favorite. The Steelers will see them in week 1. But my point is, it's not like there's a slam dunk guarantee where it's murderer's row out there. The Chiefs will be a favorite again. The Bills will be right there with them. The Patriots, maybe Mac Jones will steal the job from Cam, and maybe they'll be now, maybe they'll be a year or two away. But it's not like it's brutal out there. They may think to themselves, if certain things go right and we get in, we could squeak along and we have the talent to maybe go far. So it is win now mode, and that certainly is the plan right now. So that certainly probably hinges to what you're saying, is they're going to have to make a move, because they might even get to the thinking that we might have to screw 2022 a little bit for now, if they really believe it's open for now, because I'm sure that they would trade a couple down years to get it done again. We were watching the game. You're seeing clips. They're going to replay the Super Bowl championship win over the Cardinals. And what did Charlie Batch say right away? They probably didn't love hearing it. It's been what does it tell me? What is my analysis right away? When Bob Pompiani asked him, what are your thoughts right now? He said, it's been a while since the Steelers won a championship. And yeah, there are some other franchises, of course, the Browns never having won a Super Bowl, that can tell you that time frame's not too long, a little over a decade. But it might feel like that to Steeler fans. Nick Farabaugh, our analyst over there at Steelers Now, Mike Asti here. Find our coverage, Mitchell Northam's post-game recap over there at Steelers Now, who is our stringer covering it in Carolina for us to close the preseason. Steelers losing 34-9. And also, I'm Mike Asti, of course. And you'll eventually be able to find this show on Pittsburgh Sports Live. So head over there and subscribe to that channel as well. Like this Facebook page, though, you certainly can do that here. Nick, what are your other takeaways besides these certain position battles that are highlights? Any other thoughts about this preseason game, the finale preseason game that normally can be a big deal for this final roster, how you see the final roster shaking out, both sides of the football, even going to the punter position, because that was a battle throughout the offseason. We saw Presley Harvin out there. He gets a lot of hype for a punter, but he's looking at a veteran as his competitor, and they don't normally have two, but it's hard to say they couldn't be justified the situation. So what are your other takeaways from this and from the offseason?
There's a few takeaways. I mean, first of all, this defensive line is unreal deep. They're really 8 deep. I mean, if you count Tuitt and Hayward and Alualu, I mean, Wormley looked like a man possessed tonight against the ones.
He did.
Bugs looked great. Davis had a few plays. Loudermilk really made some noise. Mondo had a few plays. I mean, every single defensive lineman. And then you go to the outside linebackers. Jameer Jones has come on really strong. Cassius Marsh has had a nice camp. Quincy Roche looks like a promising young player as well. I mean, they're deep at pass rush. I think we can clearly see that the Steelers have done a great job of fixing that pass rush. Remember, outside linebacker depth was a concern. I don't think it's a concern anymore coming into this season. Sure. I think that they're going to be just fine there. But I think Jameer Jones might have done enough to steal Cassius Marsh's job tonight. So we'll see if he can be the fourth outside linebacker. But I think he might have done enough. Through special teams, the sack, few run sticks, he's done enough. The punter job, I think, is very interesting. I think Barry's had probably the best stretch of his career. which is very interesting. But I think Presley Harvin has looked just as good.
How does he not win the job with the hype and what he did in college and figuring he could be a star and a Pro Bowler in the NFL? Barry's looked good. He certainly has answered the bell of this competitor, but it feels like, how can Presley Harvin not be your starting punter? How can that
I agree with that. And that's just why I expect this to go to trade Joe and Barry for a sixth or something like that. I think, there's enough punter needy teams where I think they can get a nice late round pick for Barry, recoup one of those picks that they traded away. Because again, they don't have a fourth, fifth, or a sixth. So if they can get a few for that.
Yeah, our draft show next year will be fun, potentially, depending on how things go.
Yeah. Exactly. We'll see. I mean, they're going to get a few compensatory picks, but obviously they would like a few more late round picks as well. Just to see if they maybe make a move, whatever, right? So I think that you're going to look at that. And there's also a long snapper battle, which is interesting, right? I mean, Canada didn't snap at all. It was all Coons tonight. Yeah. So potentially a new long snapper in Pittsburgh. Not the most newsworthy thing, but hey, it's a new long snapper. So, that affects things out there. Another thing I really noted from this game, and I just noticed it all camp and all preseason. Are we sure they're going to start the best two tackles on this team? Like, are we sure Dan Moore isn't already better than Chuks Okorafor? He's played better than him all summer. I mean, really, once Dan Moore got comfortable in camp through the preseason, he's looked so much better than Okorafor just in game. I mean, I think he allowed his first pressure tonight on the preseason. And Okorafor yet again was getting beaten. Like the starting tackle.
He lost the job last year in camp to Zach Banner fair and square. This is his thing. He loses the job in camp. It wouldn't shock me.
Exactly. I think the starting tackle should be Banner at right tackle and Moore at left tackle, and then make Okorafor the swing. Like, that's what I think it should be. I don't expect it to be that, but that's one of my takeaways. I think Dan Moore is the second best tackle on this football team. Pretty comfortably.
If that doesn't occur, is the reason that obviously Banner didn't play most of last season except for the first game, you have then a rookie. Would that be, if we're in win now mode, if that's Mike Tomlin's thinking, we are in win now mode, meaning Mike Tomlin's thinking this, is he then going to say, if I'm in win now mode, I can't have that lack of experience and then my leader being a guy who hasn't played in a year? Is that his concern?
It might be. I mean, listen, the Steelers played Matt Filer over Kevin Dotson last year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they shouldn't have done that in the Browns game. I mean, they shouldn't have benched Kevin Dotson. He was better than Matt Filer down the stretch, right? I mean, listen, they've shown a stubbornness.
Tomlin's loyal to guys. He is loyal, sometimes to a fault.
I think that they've shown the ability to play rookies that are day 2 picks and up early, but I don't think they've shown the willingness to put in a day 3 guy that surprises them and is more ready than they thought would be, throw them in early. I don't think they've shown a willingness to do that yet.
Right.
And that's why I think, it just happens. Yes, it's a cohesion thing. They've been working to get these 5 guys together, meaning Turner, Green, Dotson, and then finally the 2 tackles. They've been working to get them together, and now they finally just have them together for 2 weeks.
Right.
And then you're going to throw in a new left tackle? I mean, really? I mean, is that what you want to do? I mean, you got to get the best 5 linemen on the field. That's it simply.
Yeah, you should get the best at every position if you're in win now mode.
Exactly. Really. And the thing is, Dan Moore has had work with the first team, right? I mean, he has. Banner's played very sparingly. So it's not like Moore is an aberration here. He has chemistry with those guys. He's worked with Kevin Dotson. He's worked with Kevin Dotson a ton this preseason, in fact. They both were running on the second team a little bit there for a while Dotson was down there. And then when they were working back together, both of them were working, even now as he's working at right tackle, Banner had played very sparingly. So he's worked with Trey Turner as well. So, I think there's not much reason to bench Dan Moore other than maybe inexperience, but I'd rather ride the highs and lows with the young guy than the consistent lows that we've seen with the Okorafor.
Yeah, and the weirdest thing is, in terms of Green, Tomlin really hinted pretty early in camp that he was kind of sold on Green without wanting to fully give it away, and that's rare for Tomlin to show his cards. So he is comfortable there with a rookie and maybe not on the other side. Maybe he doesn't want to have so much inexperience all over the place. And I think, honestly, as much as anyone knows, the Steelers' offensive line is a question mark this year. And a lot of this season hinges on the O-line. Matt Canada's system, how Ben can play, how Najee Harris can play, all of this hinges on the offensive line. But everybody's been talking about the quarterback battle, the backup quarterback battle, the running back battle, these different position battles. The O-line conversation's almost been swept under the rug. But as we're discussing, if the offensive line does not click, a lot of this isn't going to matter. No. A lot of this is not going to matter. It's going to be unfortunate. The season's not going to go where you want it to go if the offensive line does not click, and that is going to be a major question mark that we are not going to know until we're doing the post-game show after the regular season opener, if not a few games in, because you probably need to see it a few times, not just one game in.
We might not know that answer until week 10, 11-ish.
It could be, and by that point, we'll see where the Steelers are in the standings and how much they can stabilize with what the offensive line is producing. The only defense, again, of Zach Banner, who has played sparingly in terms of camp in the preseason, is he is the only one that has no negative real film on him because he won the battle last year. He had a quarter of football, sat out for a year, recovered. He's played sparingly. Nobody can say he's looked bad, but there's also not much to say he's looked great. So it's kind of just wait and see, and that's kind of what you're going to get from the offensive line.
Yeah, and I think this could be an O-line that starts out rough and grows as the season goes on.
It could.
Because it's a young O-line, and, they
could be good next year. We'll see whether that matters.
Yeah, that's also a thing. They could be rough this year, and you could see the foundations being laid for a good O-line next year.
Yeah.
But
Banner's still young, too.
He's 27, right?
Yeah, so if he's the leader and the old guy of this O-line, he is still a very young player that has years left. But again, Nick Farabaugh, Mike Asti here, our Steelers edition of Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. And, of course, our postgame coverage over there at Steelers Now. Steelers end the preseason, and we move towards the regular season. A few more topics here I want to get to. Number one, and we didn't get any announcement in this game. Some were maybe waiting for it. TJ Watt, how do you think that situation is going to shake out? Still waiting for that deal. Again, money is going to be brought to him. You're going to have to back up the Brinks truck a little bit there for TJ Watt. Do you see a possibility that if after this roster cut down, if they are going into week one after having a break, if that contract is not still signed, is there a possibility he doesn't play in that week one game?
I don't see that happening. I really don't.
Yeah. I kind of honestly thought they were going to announce that deal tonight. I was getting ready at any time for that deal to be announced. By the time we post this, it might even be announced.
Yeah, I think that'll be announced sometime before week one, whenever that is.
They're going to have a week break.
And I think they're going to start ramping TJ Watt up this week, regardless of what happens. I think that as Butler kind of referred to, he's got to get in hitting shape. I think he needs at least 2 weeks of that. I think this is the week. Regardless, it sounds. All the reports are saying they're getting close.
Yeah,
they're getting there. I feel like that's going to be announced soon. I don't think there's any danger of TJ Watt missing the opener, even if he doesn't get his contract. Right. They have to do it after the season. He knows there's a franchise tag waiting for him. That's all guaranteed money.
True. And it's one thing not to play in preseason games. And I kind of get it, not wanting to play in preseason games while you're waiting for a contract. But to miss a regular season game when he is not even just the team, and he's not being selfish. I wouldn't say that. He's not a selfish guy. But the team is looking to win now. He feels he got snubbed at a Defensive Player of the Year. He wants to win that award. So sitting out games intentionally is not going to lead you to get any votes for any of those individual awards. Trust me, I'm one of the younger members of the Pro Football Writers, and many of those older members, they see him intentionally sit out for money. They're done voting for him. So he wants that award. He's been public with it. His brother wants him to win the award. I'm sure that just his family lineage, that if he's even considering it, JJ would call him and say, you got to play. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that's going to occur, but it's going to be a question, especially when there's an off time, and that's where the talk show is going to heat up, is until we get that deal, what could happen, because that's what we've seen so far in the offseason. Another topic that I want to discuss that has been brought up a little bit that also leads into potentially the final roster and into the season. I think it's a conversation for not, but we got to discuss it. There have been some rumors and some people bringing up Eric Ebron and if the Steelers should move him because of the emergence of Pat Freiermuth, who catches everything. Again, it's possible to have two great tight ends who catch everything and have hands. That's what you want out of two tight end sets. But I don't think that's going to happen. But is there any validity there? And would you consider moving Ebron depending on the return? Because now you believe in Freiermuth as the guy to the future and clearly drafted to be that and has the hands.
Well, if you move Ebron, you have to believe in Gentry and Raider.
Right.
Because it's not like tight ends, this one position thing, especially Matt Canada's offense. It's a multi-tight end system. It's a system where you need 2 tight ends a lot, sometimes even 3. And quite frankly, yes, I like what we're seeing from Pat Freiermuth. I do like that. But we also have to caution this. He's a rookie tight end.
Yeah.
He is a rookie tight end.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about rookie tight ends historically, even guys drafted in the top 10 overall do not produce at a high level early in their careers.
No, it takes a minute. Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, maybe year 2 they pop, but it might take a minute.
Sometimes it takes till year 3 even. I mean, just look at, if you want a good example, look at the divisional rivals. David Njoku has just recently started to pop in Cleveland. Mark Andrews took till year 3 to pop in Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and Freiermuth could be better than those guys with his ceiling, possibly.
Yeah, he could possibly, but even Kelsey, Kittle.
Yeah, Kelsey's a great example, best in the game right now.
Darren Waller in Oakland and Las Vegas didn't pop until about 2 years ago, and he's 29 or 30. He's very old for the position. He didn't pop till later in his career.
Yeah,
I mean, tight end is a very different position. The transition to the NFL level is always tough for these guys. And while Freiermuth looks good, you can't expect him to eat in all areas of the field. Now, I've talked about this before. I think Freiermuth could have a 20 reception, 200-yard, 8 touchdown season because he is such a menace in the red zone. But I think Eric Ebron is a more developed, polished, experienced player. And I think he gets too much flack. I really do. I think Ebron gets a little too much hate. I thought,
our media colleagues covering the Colts don't seem to love him too much. So he'd had a bad rap coming into Pittsburgh. I haven't seen anything. Not even in a Zoom session has he been anything but friendly. The thought process is that if he would seemingly lose his job, where he clearly is tight end 2, and that happens with Freiermuth emerging, will he then rock the boat? Because clearly that'll be a problem for his next contract. He would get less money if he's not even starting on the Steelers. But we're just predicting there. It's just pure speculation. That's not been the case yet. So far, he's been a nice guy.
No, I think he's fine. I think Ebron's going to get enough production. He's literally their best receiving tight end. I will argue with anyone that he's better than Freiermuth as a receiver right now. He is straight up better than him. He's much more of a mismatch. He's a better athlete.
He's bigger. Now, he's more muscular.
Yeah, and he's that too. And quite frankly, go back and look at the Lions tape. Ebron laid down a few nice blocks in that game. I mean, there's never been a question to me about Ebron willing to block. He tries.
Yeah.
He tries.
And that's Freiermuth's problem. Mm-hmm. And Ebron, I think, might be that player. And when we actually were covering the game, we were even thinking early in the game, is Ebron losing this game? And then he's almost that little engine that could. He's going to have a couple drops early. It maybe takes a while for him to get going, but then he can explode. So he's that player that if you're Ben Roethlisberger, you want to get involved early. And if he falters early, you don't want to give up on him. You keep going to him. So that's how to feed him, is he can explode late. We don't know Freiermuth. I mean, of course, his advantage is Ben might like him in the red zone, even if Ebron's the guy that gets you there, because he is so tall, throws the ball a little high. He can jump up and get it. He can be that tight end in the red zone potentially, but who knows? But yeah, Ebron can be that guy that you just can't give up on in the middle of games. But he will have that moment that you're thinking, is this bad Ebron tonight? And then he'll pick it up later.
He is what he is, man. I mean, he's an up and down roller coaster, but you have to deal with the lows and the highs. And listen, I think losing Eric Ebron would be a blow to the offense. I mean, straight up, I think not having Eric Ebron out there would limit your ability to attack defenses with your tight ends. Sorry to Zach Gentry and Kevin Rader. I think both have taken strides this year. I just like Ebron and Freiermuth better than Freiermuth and Gentry or Freiermuth and Rader. And I think that's pretty obvious to anyone. I think, Ebron doesn't suck. Ebron is a top half of the league.
He does not suck. No.
Ebron is probably a top half of the league tight end. We have to realize
that. A deep fantasy league, you might be able to draft Ebron. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's a guy that certainly is a very good receiver. I think he's one of the better receiving tight ends in the NFL. Sure. Not saying he's, this elite guy, but he's decent enough to where I'm I'm not going to say.
Is there a problem with two tight end sets or just in general? Because those are clearly the two best tight ends on your roster. And we even talked about this when the Steelers drafted Freiermuth. He can catch everything, but the issue there is blocking. Ebron tries to block, is a little better at it now, but still he's not a strength in terms of blocking. Is it a problem they don't really have a legit blocking tight end? If they would put Freiermuth and Ebron on the field together in two tight end sets, they don't have a blocker really. Is that an issue?
I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, Gentry has been a good blocker, and so is Rader. So
just how much do you use them?
Yeah, how much do you use Rader and Gentry? And also you have Derek Watt, right? I mean, he is also a capable blocker. And if you ever need help, there's good old reliable Juju Smith-Schuster willing to hit a crack block on anyone. So Chase Claypool also loves to get after it. I mean, they have blockers. But yeah, no, it's an issue. I think Freiermuth is starting to figure out a little bit of the blocking. And again, Ebron was putting down some decent blocks. I think Ebron looks like a better blocker than he did a year ago, which, is good to see. Not that he's going to be great or anything, but yeah, I mean, it is an issue. But again, when you're trying to create so much mismatches, and Matt Canada has repeatedly said that we want to create mismatches in this scheme, those two are the ones that are going to create your mismatches. And listen, tight ends are vital to Matt Canada's scheme. So you need your two best tight ends on the field, and those are your two best tight ends, period.
They are the two best tight ends, period. That definitely is the truth. Nick Farabaugh, Mike Asti here, our Steelers edition of Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. And, of course, our postgame coverage over there at Steelers Now. Like the Facebook page here, click subscribe on the YouTube channel, and find us all across social media. As we now close up shop here to our preseason coverage, our preseason postgame shows, and our postgame show here after the Steelers' fourth preseason game, headed into the regular season, that opener against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo, getting potential revenge from last year, but certainly a game Buffalo should be favored by. We're now going to talk some Steelers-Bills because that's what we're going to get next time the Steelers play a football game. What do you expect from this game? Still question marks all around the Steelers. So as we're discussing this instant reaction from the end of the preseason, a lot of unknown here, but of course we know the starters for the most part. We know there's a new system in place. We got to see Ben running in the regular season. The defense has veterans that still can get it done, you would figure, but a lot of question marks remain. The Bills are going to be one of the favorites in the conference. Josh Allen could be a favorite for the MVP of the league based on last year being so close to it if it wasn't for Rodgers really turning it on at the end. What do you expect out of that game? What are the keys to that game for the Steelers to start the season off where they win? Because it is not easy week one. You are playing a playoff team right away.
And you're playing them in Buffalo. And that's one of the rare stadiums where Steelers aren't going to take it over because Bills Mafia is Bills Mafia.
That's a rabid fan base.
That's a rabid fan base, and they will not have their stadium taken over by Steelers fans. So they're going to be playing in what Mike Tomlin will call a hostile environment. If you will. But, I think that when you look at that game, it's going to be coming down to three things. One, offensive line, period. When you look at what the Bills have done to the Steelers over the past few years, when they've beaten them, going back to the game with Duck as the starter, going back to that game, they've destroyed them on their blitzes. I mean, even when they had, decent O-lines, they just knew how to beat the Steelers O-line. They knew what to do against them. Can that O-line hold up, one, and can the O-line get pushed in the run game? Because this has always been the Bills' weakness. It's the running game. The Steelers have never been able to do anything on the ground against them. Because frankly, the running game truly reached its low point last year, but that's been declining for about 4 or 5 years at this point. Yeah. So I feel like that's a huge part of the game. O-line, run game. 2, can your corners hold up? That's going to be huge. Can you minimize Josh Allen's impact, and can you minimize Stephon Diggs' impact? If you can minimize those two a little bit, and force the hand into the games of guys like, say, Cole Beasley or Gabriel Davis or Devin Singletary, I feel like you have a better chance of winning, right? Just minimize them. They're going to get their knocks in. That's a really good team. They're going to get big plays against you. But if you could minimize them, maybe force them to have more methodical drives, force them to not have explosive plays, and maybe get Allen, on a turnover. That's big. That's what you got to do. So work in tandem with your pass rush, your coverage, and hope that holds up. Can that sub-package rotation work out? And more importantly, when they do go 4 wide, can they actually survive? Or do they need a dime package? Do they absolutely need to play dime more? Because again, is Schobert and Bush going to be so exposed where it's just going to be bad, right? Linebackers on wide receivers all season. Is that going to be an issue? And I think the key third is without a doubt Ben Roethlisberger. I think, again, yes, he looked really good against Detroit.
Yeah,
he did.
He did.
But let's not forget what happened down the stretch last season. He kind of fell apart.
Yep.
He kind of fell apart.
He did. He did.
So is Ben Roethlisberger, was that an aberration? Was that because he was playing in Detroit? Or was it because Ben's arm is better? Ben's feeling better. He actually is slimmer. He's in more better condition. Or is this Ben, actually having a renaissance year? We'll see. I mean, the signs are very, very, very encouraging for Ben. But in order to beat Buffalo, Ben Roethlisberger is at least going to have to go somewhat toe-to-toe with Josh Allen. And that's going to be the thing. Explosive plays, they're going to need a few big plays. That's straight up. They need explosiveness, whether that's via Najee Harris, whether that's, a bit deep pass like they did to a Deontay Johnson in that preseason game, whatever it is. Make the drives easier on yourself. No more dink and dunk 5-yard crossers. None of that. Just none of it. So if they can, those are their three key factors. And there's so many other factors that are key, obviously. Yeah. Getting after Josh Allen, making sure that the drops are minimized because those can kill drives.
Sure. And Deontay Johnson's been dropping down and doing push-ups the second he drops a ball in camp, for anyone who didn't know. So he's really working on that. And I do believe he has potential to be a number one in this league if he can figure out the drop. So that could certainly bolster the offense. And obviously against the Bills especially, but really against every team, taking care of the football because they are going to try to snatch the ball. They're going to try to create turnovers. They're going to try to make it easier on Josh Allen and company by flipping the ball as quick as possible, and Ben has to take care of the football. It might be one of those games where he's not going to have a chance at 300 yards. He might have to feed Najee, take care of the football, and maybe get one or two big plays and sprinkle it in there, but he's going to have to take care of the football number one for sure.
This is a game where Matt Canada's offense can truly showcase. This is a game where they can use play action and really, if you can have a decent run game with Najee Harris, and this doesn't have to be a crazy game, it could literally be like 18 for 84 for Najee. That's all
that could make it better to have Najee in there, makes it better for Matt Canada than having James Conner. You could really threaten with the play action that maybe you couldn't have done a year ago.
Exactly. And then if you have that play action, maybe you can hit Ebron on deep crosser. Maybe you can hit Deontay Johnson deep like you did against, the Lions. Maybe you can hit Juju Smith-Schuster down the seam. Right. Chase Claypool over the top, whatever. Maybe you can open that middle of the field. And there's so many schematic specifics with the Bills that match up against the Steelers and how it's going to be different from last year because of Matt Canada's scheme. But explosive plays are going to be the crux of it. And what it's going to come down to is the Steelers minimizing what the Bills do offensively, explosively, and themselves getting explosive plays offensively. Period. That's going to be they win that game if they minimize the explosiveness from the Bills offense and they had explosive plays themselves on offense and or force turnovers to give short fields for their offense. That's it.
And the Bills are a favorite in the AFC. They're one of the favorites in the AFC. They're probably the runner-up favorite behind the Chiefs again, who just have to be the favorite when you win the conference back-to-back years and you have an MVP at quarterback. But it doesn't get much easier for the Steelers afterwards. So even if you're okay with a loss to the Bills because you know how great the Bills are and that is a rough week one matchup, the Raiders are better than people thought last year. The Bengals are going to have Burrow, even though it's a rough Steelers pass rush that he'll face. Rodgers is playing for the Packers. Denver is probably a winnable game. Russell Wilson then for the Seahawks. Last year, they faced a lot of quarterbacks. They got lucky that weren't the starter, the normal starter. Dak Prescott got hurt, etc. Carson Wentz was in there and then got dinged up, and then he's since left teams and got hurt again. But they didn't get the normal guy they were expecting. Things got changed around. They were facing RG3 at one point. So you expect that not to be the case again this year. It is not an easy schedule. It is a hard schedule, and early on in the season, you could easily see if things do not go right, they win only 2 of those first 6 games, which certainly will have the wheels fall off very early in this year. So everyone stabilizing themselves may not matter if they get to week 8, 9, 10 with only a couple wins, but these are not going to be easy games while you have so many question marks and you're dealing with so much. The Steelers are a weird team for the casual fan, that they are a very talented team that could go one of 2 ways. Really good, or maybe not good enough, and the question marks are there despite all the talent. That is why, to their credit, the national media are so split, and it's either they're going to be awful or they're going to be a dark horse Super Bowl contender. Because if everything goes right, maybe they could with the conference being open. If things go wrong, then it might be a rough go. It'll be an interesting season, to say the very, very least. As we wrap things up, Nick, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have a prediction for week 1, Steelers, Bills? It is in Buffalo. Question marks around the Steelers. You touched on the keys. The Bills are good. Nobody's saying it's fool's gold, but it's week 1. We don't know yet until we see it.
Throw me really on the spot. Wow.
I know. I won't hold you to it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to throw you a text
I'll
if you're way off.
there.
But
I got to obviously do more studying and
sure.
That
it's
stuff.
way early. It's way early.
It's very early. I'll tell you this. I think that the Steelers do have a shot in this game. Okay. I do actually think they match it better than they did last year, because they're going to have Hayden this time. That's huge. They didn't have Joe Hayden last year in that match.
And he's big play Hayden at times, and this is early in the year. He's healthy right now.
But it's in Buffalo. Tough to bet against them. I think the Steelers just have so many question marks, and man, I might look stupid if the Steelers O-line comes kicking butt and Najee's running all wild and all this. I think Buffalo wins this 31-20.
Okay.
I'll go with that. Okay. I think that's reasonable. Steelers kind of keep it close. Buffalo's just a little too much to handle. Yeah. And I think that's reasonable. I think the Steelers, might have some hiccups early in the year. And then maybe the Steelers are one of those teams that, just hits their stride at the right time.
Yeah. I'll tell you this. It's better to hit the stride at the end of the year than to go 11-0 and then lose a bunch of games and have the season be ruined. So you'd rather have that be the case. The schedule is kind of front-loaded with being difficult. It's harder overall than last year. And unfortunately for this game, for the Pittsburgh perspective, the Steelers enter the game with so many question marks that we've been touching on. The Buffalo Bills have chemistry all over the place. They probably didn't even need the offseason to get ready for that game. They know where everyone's going to be. Josh Allen has everything down in his sleep, whereas Ben at 39 is learning a whole new playbook. And it's not like when Brady or Favre or Manning went to new teams where the offense was catered to them or they had similar coaches that they were aware of. This is a whole new system Ben is not aware of. This is almost unprecedented that he is having to learn an entire new thing despite it being with the same team. So we will see. I'm going to go 27-20. Also, the Bills winning. I do think they win that game. And we will then see from there. Nick, thanks for joining me. We're going to be at this, I'm sure, again throughout the season. You have your coverage over there at Steelers Now. You'll be looking at some film and have that here throughout the weekend. And then we right now do have the post-game recap over there at SteelersNow.com. Hit us up on social at PGH Steelers Now, at PGH Sports Live. Subscribe to the channel. Like us on Facebook. Hit us up all over the place because we're going to be at it in full force here this season. We were able to even prepare ourselves our preseason finale boat around the river thanks to Alan Saunders. Kale joined us as well. So we got ready ourselves here, and even though this game was a little bit of a stinker, we will see how this roster shakes out and if anybody played themselves out of a job. I don't think anyone, maybe Pierre, not many played themselves into a job with the way this game shook out. And then what freaking happens with the quarterback depth chart, because as you know, that is going to be the conversation. It is going to overshadow everything else. It might be very mundane though, to where it is likely Ben, Rudolph, Haskins, which in all likelihood there probably wasn't much of a competition this year, and it's just going to stay the course. But speculation apparently is fun for some. That'll do it for this edition of the show. So for Nick Farabaugh, through all of us here at the Pittsburgh Sports Now Network, of course, Steelers Now and Pittsburgh Sports Live, I'm your host, Mike Asti. Stick with us for now, the regular season coverage with us at Steelers Now.